Dude, you are getting well.
Dude,
here we are.
Here we are. Welcome, family, welcome, tribe, and welcome. Owen, I'm so excited to have you today on this. And for everybody who's listening live or later on, Owen is someone who inspired me. I found him magically through the beautiful algorithms of the interweb, and I really found he had a lot of wisdom in medicine. Just his life and what he's passionate about spoke to me, has helped me in my well-being. I got to be a guest on his podcast, The Awareness Space, last year, maybe 2 years ago. Wow. And so we'll catch up and dive all of that deeply into that deeply. And we're going to be talking about, self-awareness and compassion today. So, ladies and gentlemen, Owen, I'm going to introduce you here. Self-awareness. This is Owen Morgan, a self-awareness and well-being coach informed by Polyvagal Theory, trauma healing, and acceptance and commitment therapy. He's also the host of the Awareness Space podcast. Owen Morgan. Give it up.
Woo, woo, woo. Yeah,
so
well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I do really appreciate this. And you're right, it feels like a lifetime since our chat. I think I started it in December 2020, maybe. Yeah, that sounds about right. So it would have been right at the beginning of 21. So it's crazy how much you and me have got up to since then, I found.
Oh my God. I mean, I've been through a lot. I don't know about you. And you may notice that, Owen and I sound a little bit differently. I'm in New York. Owen, where are you coming from today?
I'm in the gorgeous city of Bath in the UK. It's beautiful.
Yes, I love it. I love Bath. That's so cool. And what has you, so you have all these really interesting, I just wanted to read your intro, especially because, it's been a while since we've seen each other and a lot has happened, and I'm sure in your life too. And so I want to get into some of that. And I'm just excited that you're still here today. So that means that you're a survivor, you're a thriver. And your podcast has been inspirational to me. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to share you with the world and my audience. So it's really cool to have you in this space. And so you mentioned polyvagal theory and trauma healing and commitment therapy. For those people who are listening, who may not, I had never heard of polyvagal theory until I met you. And I love studying all kinds of stuff. So can you tell us a little bit about what that is, why you introduced yourself in that way, and why it's important to you?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thank you very much. And it's kind of, it's interesting because when we first were talking, I was just hosting the podcast, and I just love talking to people. I love hearing their stories. I love people that have come from real darkness and are now shining a light, and it's just so beautiful. And I've been interviewing people for years. I've probably done 200 at least interviews over 3 different podcasts. So that's kind of where I was at then. And I was kind of, COVID had kind of hit me hard, and I was a massage therapist, and my business just completely collapsed when COVID came. So that was a real kicker. So I had to go and get a full-time job. But while all that was unfolding, I was like, what am I going to do next? I clearly love all of this stuff. I love neuroscience. I love the nervous system, the mind, consciousness. And I was like, I can't be a coach. I had self-belief stuff. I can't be a coach. I can't do it. I interview all these coaches. They know what they're doing. They're confident. I kept putting it off. And then eventually I was like, oh, I'm going to regret not doing this. So I've gone on this big journey of studying. I spent the last year studying my coaching qualifications. And the reason I mention all of those things you've just said is because that's going to inform my coaching practice. They're the tools I'm going to use in my practice. I'm just setting that up before I talk about polyvagal. But, for me, it's all about self-awareness and self-compassion. That is the key to the healing journey for me. You need to see what's going on, meet it with love, without judgment, and then make moves towards the life that matters, a life of value. And that's all well and good. But what happens when your
Yeah, it
nervous
sounds
system?
great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
on paper it sounds great. But
Yeah.
what I found in all my healing from all my trauma is that because I wasn't addressing my nervous system, addressing the vagus nerve, which is part of polyvagal theory, and not addressing what was happening in my body, I wasn't able to really heal in the way I needed to. I was still dysregulated, even though my mind kind of was getting there. So polyvagal theory is all about the vagus nerve and how that innervates, all organs in your body. It kind of controls the fight and flight response, the shutdown response. Like an animal is about to be attacked, it's either going to run away, fight back, or flop, freeze, to protect itself. And we do that. We're kind of like these animals, and we're going out in the world being triggered by this or positively affected by that. And our nervous system is either really safe and socialized and connected, or it can be stressful and there's anxiety, or there's like, I need to get out of here, or I'm really angry, or God, I feel terrible, I want to hide away. And until we get a grasp of what's happening with our nervous system, it's really hard to start rebuilding or building the life that we want. So polyvagal theory is all about looking at those nervous system states you're in and how we can start to regulate that. Because as soon as you do that, the way you think is going to change, how you feel yourself is going to change. The story changes when your nervous system is safe and social. Otherwise, you're just fighting a losing, spinning battle of fight and flight thoughts, flight and fight thoughts. You can't get out of that. You have to become safe so your thoughts start to shift.
Is powerful, profound, and I mean, it sounds like it's actually easier and accessible than maybe we make it. And it reminds me of all the people and new clients, and I'll practice meditation. And they're like, oh, I suck at meditation. I'm terrible. I don't want to do that. And I'm like, well, what happens? And they're like, well, I think. And I'm like, well, congratulations, And that statement, like, you can't think your way out of right action. You have to act your way out of right thinking. And these are, to break it down into a nervous system response, like, you're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. Your nervous system has learned to fire, or is firing this, or activated in certain ways. And you're actually, it sounds like you're sort of taking a scientific approach to just see, like, what's actually happening physically, neurologically. Let's address that. And all the other stuff can be there. But, if you can just focus on that, there actually is some access to healing, to transformation, to freedom.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's, you're bringing in this sense of sort of the observer self, yourself as context. You're witnessing your experience at any given time. And we can use that a lot for the way you're thinking. I notice I'm having this thought, or I notice I'm having this memory, and it's flying through. None of this stuff's permanent. It's only permanent because we're hanging on to it, or attached to it, or trying to push it away. So we use all these tools to work with our mind. But you also need to observe your nervous system and say, not I'm dysregulated, because there's no self here. My nervous system is dysregulated. That takes the power out. So my nervous system's dysregulated. That's interesting. I'm curious. I would like to explore that. That's empowering, and you can move forward a bit more.
That is very empowering for me, and I hope that's accessible to any of you who are listening. Let us know. So we can focus at it from I like that, because I'm all about the body. And I think if we can actually see what's going on in our body, and we store so many things in our body, and we have all these new diseases popping up and things, because I think we've gotten so into our heads, and there's actually so much great, amazing information available if we just stop long enough, or pause long enough, or listen long enough, or get curious for a moment of what's actually happening. And our body's like sending us these messages like, hello, and we're just like, I have anxiety, I need to go add some more to my pile and take on more and work harder. And one of the things I love about you is, I would get these amazing voice memos from Owen, like on the way to work. And he was like always in between spaces. And like, you just really, it was incredible, like the way you show up, and you were committed, and you were able to have your podcast in these hours, like just really creating your life and having a breakdown and all that. So I assume you didn't did you wake up, like, did you come out of the womb when you were a kid, like, you know what, I'm going to be a polyvagal, theory, trauma healing, self-awareness coach?
No, certainly not. But you know, I think when we come out of the womb, depending on your belief systems, I think from then on we are shaped. We mirror others, you know, our caregivers or whatever it may be. You know, we are shaped by the world, the societies it's built today. So we just sort of morph into whatever this adult ends up being. And I think,
Yeah.
you know, from a trauma perspective, I've interviewed hundreds of people with just horrendous trauma stories, and it's just, yeah, it's so powerful to hear how people have sort of moved their way out of that. But you know, for me personally, you know, with the childhood I had, it was pretty rough. Like all of us tend to have these stories, but I was a mess. By the time I got to 20, I was just so dysregulated, and life was really tough. It was really hard to walk out the door every day. So over time of having therapy and healing work and seeing practitioners and being a part of groups, I grew. Obviously fell in love with all of this, but I think I always loved it anyway. I was always interested, but I used to write poetry as a kid when I was 14 and 14. I used to write these like really insanely deep poetry about the human experience.
Do you
Just
have
kind of
any you could share with us today?
not off the top of my head. You put me on the spot there.
Any around, like any journals hidden
Oh
around?
no, I've got like 4 books. I should get them published really. But
Yeah.
I read back at them and go, wowzers, where did I get that language from and the depth of it all? So clearly it's part of that. But I think my own personal trauma has led me here really. And I just love human beings. And really, after everything humans have done to me, I really shouldn't. And I think that's the message, I think.
Wow, that's powerful. And I think I could resonate with that. You know, I would dare to say that most people could find evidence for that same art, you know, like experience that you know, we've all been let down by humans. I actually had a great discovery call with a new client today who saw for the first time that he could actually be responsible for his life because he's been looking for other humans to be his sounding board for so long, like showed up for other people his whole life, but not for himself. And so people have ultimately continued to let him down and given him proof that he can't trust anyone. And I find that a lot of us, I see that pattern a lot, especially in men. This like somehow in our society, we've been taught that we need to shoulder the burden and not share or ask for help or anything, and which just creates more of a problem. And so, and I find that the more I study this stuff and I go back to it, that a lot of us have made up our minds about this stuff when we're like pre 10 years old, you know, like 7 to 10 years old to stay safe. And then, and our nervous system's been almost trained for that, right? Do you, in my experience, does any of that resonate with you? Have you seen?
Yeah, I think, you know, as you can imagine, I've interviewed a lot of men over the years on the various shows, but you know, how many times can I talk about men's health? And I'm thinking we still got to keep doing it. We've got to keep doing it over and over again,
Yeah, we
because
really do.
you know, the right man at the right time will hear just that particular episode on the right day. So it's really important to keep doing that. And I want to work with men and women, but you know, the men thing will be really special to me because I've never been the kind of, you know, masculine hide it type. I've never been like that. I can't even relate to what that'd be like. I've always been very mostly emotionally open, really. But I think you said something about safety there, which I thought was really interesting, because the way we're brought up, especially in our era, is, you know, even then, you know, don't show emotion, be strong, take care of your family, blah, blah, blah. There's no safety in that because all of us need to be held. All of us need to be cuddled. All of us need to be told, it's going to be okay. Come here. I've got you. We all need that. That's what makes us feel safe. And we can be a functioning adult from a place of safety, polyvagal, safe and social nervous system. But the message we're giving is just creating an unsafe life for these men. And if they're unsafe, they're either going to be angry, anxious, stressed, can't relax, lots of random habits. So until those men start to feel safe, which to them might feel a bit weird to hear that, what do you mean feel safe? That's really like mushy and yucky.
Yeah.
They're not really going to engage in that. But without safety, we can't heal. Without safety, we can't grow. Without safety, we can't learn. Men need to know they need to feel safe before they can take care of their family. They need to feel safe so they can make them safe. That's the message.
Man, yes, I couldn't say that enough. Thank you for that wisdom. That's why I love you, Owen. I knew that's why there's a reason we had you on today. It was you know, because I think I would dare to say some men may even experience the conversation of safety or feeling safe as unsafe, because to be safe and to be like actually vulnerable and let down our walls could be terrifying. And I'm always drawn to men who are open, and I'm curious how that, process happens. And maybe it doesn't matter so much about the why, but you've been so willing to be open, now. And I'm curious if you would be willing to share anything about your childhood that you feel like may have shaped your relationship to men, or your perception of men in the world, or just like how that's impacted your adulthood. I mean, you've mentioned there's some trauma, and we all have some type of trauma, and it's kind of seems to be part of childhood in a way. But would you mind sharing any
Sure.
snippet from yours?
Yeah, sure. I told this various parts of the story many times. There's actually bits of my story that I hardly ever mention, and I added that in some of the show notes that I sent you. I thought, oh my God, I never talk about that. But childhood-wise, it's interesting because what tends to be the most common things, it's either trauma is either going to be neglect or too much of something. So traumatic. When you get traumatized, it's something that's overwhelming. It's too much too soon, but also it's too little for too long, which is also traumatizing. So it's the sense of being neglected, not being seen, not being held, and then also obviously abused and all that kind of thing. And I kind of had a bit of both. So I'm not surprised I had a combination of fight and flight, anger, anxiety, but also depression and shutdown. So a bit of both. But my parents were the kind of parents that always worked. They always gave me a safe home. They always had food on the table. They always provided that way, I knew I had somewhere to live. I never had to worry about money. Got lots of toys, They got that bit done. On the hierarchy of needs, they nailed it. That bit, somewhere, shelter, all that good stuff. What they weren't so good at, bless them, is kind of to nurture me and help me regulate myself. And if I had a tantrum, it would be like, stop doing that. Stop being a nuisance. Stop it immediately. So I never learned how to regulate any emotion. So they were, I was always in childcare and all that kind of thing. So they were hardly around. When they weren't really present. So I was a very lonely child, no siblings, really, really struggled. I felt very, very lonely. And then because I was constantly in childcare, I had different kinds of childminders, obviously bringing me up in different ways. One of them then abused me, and kind of, if I was behaving badly, she would lock me in a cupboard under the stairs. I was like 6 or 7. She'd shove food down my throat if I wouldn't eat it. You've got to eat everything on your plate. So
it's
I was
bad
fighting.
You didn't become Harry Potter.
Yeah,
but this is pretty cool. I mean, you had to live under stairs. So it's like, I'm sorry to make a joke. That sounds really awful, actually. It's just humor. Like, I mean, it's it's just so. It's unbelievable. I'm upset hearing that. Like, I'm mad. So that's what's going on. I want to say, when I hear that, I feel mad. I feel upset for that person did that to you.
No, I know, but it's interesting now, after all of these years of all the training I've done with people I interviewed, to really free yourself, you have to somehow find some form of compassion for your abusers, somehow, somewhere. I don't even know if it's possible for most of us, but you have to try and say, okay, they were clearly dysregulated. They were clearly going through some stuff and they couldn't control their actions, it seems. It's a really hard thing to do, but it really helped me just go, I feel for her. It must have been really tough for her to behave like that. Now I have a stepson of around the same age. Never in a million years would I do that to him. So I can heal through him by I can reparent myself by parenting him in the way that I should have been parented. So I can heal my inner child whilst also bringing him up. How cool is that?
That is so beautiful. And the saying, like, hurt people comes up for me, and your awareness that you do not hold on to this anger for this person. You actually, I hear some compassion. That clearly they were not well and or didn't have the tools to know how to handle a child, right? And that was like what they knew to do. Like, this is how it, and who knows what tools they received from their parents, right? So it's really beautiful to hear you talk about the pain and then how you're reflecting and growing from it now.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's easier to say these things when you've done all the learning and you get a sense of this and you do the work on yourself. It's much easier to be compassionate about other people once you've cultivated self-compassion. And it's the same with regulation. You can only really self-regulate yourself if you were shown it through co-regulation. Caregivers really do need to show us how to regulate. They show us through holding us, rubbing us, rocking us, saying, it's going to be okay. I'm here if you need me.
Let's talk
They're the
about co-regulation real quick,
Yeah.
because I love this, but I want to make sure people are catching this. So co-regulation, because some people may not know that you can actually, your nervous systems can co-regulate with whoever you're living with, anyone, right?
Yeah, definitely. It comes back to that safety piece again as well. So, if you see your child is really struggling, and it's really hard, isn't it? They have tantrums and it can be a bit triggering and, oh my God, what should I do? But this sense of co-regulation is, say someone, a kid falls over and cuts his knee, so it's like, okay, right. So we're going to pop a plaster on this and off you go. That's not co-regulation. Co-regulation is like, how you feeling? How are you? Come here. Give them a hug. It's going to be all right. Help them soothe their nervous system. They're like a little bit scared. Their nervous system's fight and flight. And you help them come from fight and flight into their safe and social state, into their, now I'm calm. Now I can take a breath. That comes from touch and hugging and soft tone of voice. All these things to show them how to come from fight and flight up to safe and social connection. That needs to be taught when you're a kid. And then when you become an adult, you can use those same tools. You can self-soothe. You know what you need to do to help yourself come out of fight and flight. What tools do you need? How can you regulate with other people and feel safe with others? The parents, caregivers, step-parents, grandparents, they all teach us that. They teach us how to regulate our own nervous system through them being present and holding us and rocking us and speaking to us and making sure we're okay. It sounds really obvious. Loads of us don't get it, though. That's the crazy thing.
I mean, that doesn't sound obvious to me. I mean, yes, and natural, but that's not, if you see another man in distress, you're not going to go like, how are you feeling? And hold their hand. And, I wonder if we certainly don't talk to ourselves that way. I mean, hopefully we do, but I don't hear a lot of people say, yeah, it's a really nurture. And so, I mean, for the people who are, say that's that sounds great, Owen, these the co-regulating, but what are the tools as now we're grown adults dealing with our lives, and what's the access to that now?
It's interesting, trying to learn self-regulation tools without co-regulation experiences is never an easy thing.
My God, yeah. And even if you're in a relationship, then you've got that dynamic too, and they may be bringing their stuff to it as well, right? Whatever their nervous system has been trained by from their life or trauma, right?
Yeah,
and then
definitely.
How to co-regulate those together.
Yeah, I think it's more about, that's why I want to do the coaching the way I'm going to, about self-awareness and self-compassion. You can't really regulate yourself until you get a sense of kind of what triggers you, what feels safe, what feels comfortable, until you go on that journey of unpacking that and getting a blueprint for how your nervous system and your mind works, how your habits are. So this is the habits of your behavior outwardly, but also the behaviors of your mind. People don't think of thoughts as behaviors, but they are. We think in certain ways. It's behavior that we do to help us through things. And until you unpack that, you can't really know what the right tools are. That's the tricky thing. You have to go on that journey, but it's very much about tapping into your nervous system and getting a sense of that. Okay, so I'm in fight and flight. What do I need to do to use this energy? So normally it's sympathetic energy, right? So the problem is people say, you stressed? Why don't you meditate? The problem with that is that if you're in sympathetic state, which is full of adrenaline, full of cortisol, and full of energy, you ain't sitting still. You're not going to have the concentration to follow your breath. You need to move. You need to do mindful walking. You need to go for
if someone's
a walk.
like, hey, why don't you calm down? And you're like, I'm going to punch you in the face. That's what I want to do, right? So the sympathetic is the fight or flight, right?
Yeah. So it's like, instead of saying, what you just said, you would say, let's get moving. Let's go for a walk, mate. So if you see your friend is like really charged up, angry or anxious, say, let's go for a walk, buddy. Then you go for a walk and you wouldn't do this because you're not a mindfulness teacher or anything, but you wouldn't be like, notice your feet as it connects with the ground. Obviously, you're not going to be doing that. But what you can do is just get outside, walk, and without being too cheesy about it, kind of just notice stuff, notice the sounds, notice how cold the air is, kind of come back into your body and say, I'm present right now. I'm in my body, and my body needs me to do this or to do that. And I think it's a skill that we really need to be invested in. If there's a life
Yeah.
we want, if there's a life that we want that's aligned with our values, then we're more likely to do it. Got off on a tangent there, but it's really important to say that.
No, I'm with you. If there's a life we want, it's important to do it, and I really believe in that. And I just want to say too, I'm a 41-year-old adult without children yet, and we're creating that. But I have a backyard with a swing set, a perch, a fire pit, weeds to pull, a basketball goal, soccer ball / football, depending on who's listening, and and a bicycle and my feet, and I love to run. So I have like basically a playground for myself to go outside and release stress in certain ways, or fight, or if I'm activated with my partner, we found just walking or running or me moving into the fight or flight can actually serve, as long as we've learned to talk about like, I bring this back to partnership and not just parenting, because it's in all relationships. But we establish safety in that one of us will say, hey, I'm going to take some time to cool down, or I'm going to let's take a break, and then we'll come back together. So we're creating that we will turn towards each other again. It's not just like that avoidant behavior, like, oh, see ya. Which we've learned that's how we co-regulate, because my nervous system has that anxious attachment that wants to chase and solve things right now, and the more intense I get, the more I want to resolve immediately, and hers is the exact opposite, the get away, and so we match perfectly. But we've learned to do that in that dance, notice and then take a break, so that we can come back together when they're not as activated, and or just go take care of ourselves in the morning, and then we'll hang out, rather than trying to make our nervous system I guess I'm saying this, I'm also learning that you can't always co-regulate with someone else, and it's important to learn how to self-soothe as well, right? And so you're in those moments, and you've mentioned, taking a walk. What are some of the ways you self-soothe?
I'm so glad you asked that, because I was getting ready to give you a nice example. So just to touch on briefly, because this is very much geared towards men especially, and things they go through. But I had some somatic experiencing recently, so I knew there was still some stuff going on for me. And before I went into coaching, I kind of wanted to take a look at that. So my anxiety started to come back after years of not having it. Really, I had really bad depression, and then when I dealt with my trauma that I had no memory of, I started to remember it. It then became fight and flight, so anxiety and all that kind of stuff. Then it went away. My life started to settle down a bit. Then anxiety came back, and I was like, oh God, okay, what's wrong with me now? And then I started doing the broken thing. Oh God, am I ever going to, blah, blah, blah. I need to get rid of this, which is just not the way to approach this. But by having these sessions, he was able to show me that if you're really angry, but you can't use the anger, you can't use it in any way, you can't get rid of it, you can't dispel it in a way that's useful, or you have shame around it, you'll bury it. But the problem is that anger is full of sympathetic charge. It's full of energy and cortisol and adrenaline, and you're pushing it down. All you're left with is anxiety. So we figured out that I didn't have anxiety at all. I was just bloody angry. I was really angry because I'd started to uncover more trauma stuff that I'd have. Oh my God, how could they do this to this defenseless boy? It's had all this anger inside me. And if anybody knows me, I'm this bubbly, fun, silly, playful character. Anger is not something you'd expect from me. And because of that narrative, and because of the way people see me, I had shame around being angry. So I buried it, and it became anxiety. So we were able to work through that and say, we don't need to work on your anxiety. We need to get this anger out, mate. He was an amazing practitioner.
Wow.
So we just worked on me dealing with that. I was angry about lots of things at that time. And he able to show me how to use that anger in a really constructive way, not just smashing a pillow into the floor or whatever. Some of it is also about meeting with that with compassion. So I was able to go, do you know what? No, it wasn't okay that they did that to me. It wasn't okay those bullies who beat me up every day. It's not okay. These people take advantage of me over and over again because I'm a soft touch or whatever story I have. I got angry. I shaked. I trembled. I burst into tears. I was exhausted afterwards. I really processed that energy by bursting into tears and crying and just maybe listen to some metal music and have a sing along. Just really get that energy out. I am angry, and it was done in a really safe way, and it liberated me. And ever since, I've just felt very weird not having that inside me. So
Wow.
it's not really the answer to the question you gave me, but I thought it was really important. You're gonna have to remind me what that question was.
I don't even know if I remember, but I love everything you're saying. So it feels really relevant to whatever we were talking about. No, we were
Self-soothing.
talking, yeah,
That's
we were talking
self-soothing.
about
Self-soothing.
self-soothing, and
Yeah.
you're like, shout out to your therapist or that counselor, whoever that was, the facilitator is awesome.
Yeah. I
Um,
never would have guessed it was anger, because that's not part of my
yeah.
makeup. But he managed to see that I'd really hid that part of me away. But just to quickly touch about self-soothing, because you asked me about it. Um, what I've done is just cultivate a really healthy relationship with my body. So my go-to, I'll tell you right now what it is. It's really powerful. I'm a massage therapist for 10 years, so I'm all about the power of touch. So I really struggle to meditate. So I'll try loads of things, follow my breath, notice my thoughts, connect with the environment. I even watched a candle flame. That was quite good, just being really present with
Mm,
the flame. But what I found was just pressing. So I get my hand and I use my thumb, my massage hands, of course, and then I'll just lightly massage like the bottom of each finger, just on the underside of the knuckle, like really lightly, and notice the sensation. Then I'll go into the middle of the hand, and I've done it for so long now that no matter what state I'm in, if I do that, it gets me straight back in my body. The energy starts to drop, or I come out of shutdown. I become more present just from
mm,
pressing into my hand and massaging it and self-soothing that part of my body. And that's my main go-to. It's a body awareness technique to make me present right now, to realize that the experience I'm having doesn't need to be all the experience I'm having right now. I can still have the experience kind of on a TV screen in front of me. It's part of me. I'm watching a film with me,
yeah.
but I'm also watching the film. So I'm aware that I'm having this experience. So by pressing that, it puts me back into the cinema watching this experience unfold. That's kind of like a metaphor that I picked up on, is
Ooh,
that,
I love that.
you're having the experience, but you're also watching it. Once you've figured
Yeah.
that, once you figured out that tool, life becomes much easier, and you can actually start to heal because you can witness your experience, not be overcome by it. And that's very powerful.
That is powerful, and we love meta here. I love being and you're creating the awareness. This is beautiful access to awareness and a touch point and something consistent that you've practiced again and again. That's a reminder. So as soon as you start going back to that place, it's training your body to go back to the place you've trained it to go to, which is a calmer state, right? And so you're literally just creating some awareness. So I guess this whole awareness space is really working out. This is awesome. Um, what is your what is your daily self-care like? Is there anything in part of your daily wellness routine, or your looking after your little Owen today?
It's interesting because self-care, I tell you what, I think about values. Self-care would be a value. I'd like to
Mm,
think, hopefully all of us have the value of self-care. That's the ideal, I suppose. But I've struggled. I'll be honest. I've sometimes struggled to take care of myself properly. I overwork. I just need to finish this, or I just need to finish editing this episode, and I don't listen. I can see my energy just starting to get a bit fried and frazzled. I'm starting to get a
mhm.
little bit, oh god, but I just keep going. So I've had to really, really work hard on my relationship with my passions, because when you really love something, you just want to do more of it, don't you? And it just
Yeah.
burns you out the same way as something that you don't enjoy. So I've had to get to a point of kind of tapping into those values. How do I want to show up? How do I want to behave in the world? What does that look like? And for me to do that, I need to take care of myself better. So my nervous system's in a better place to be a better dad, to be a better partner, to be a
Mm,
better coach. And it's paying off, you know? It's really boring stuff, guys. I'm sorry. But instead of going to bed at 1 or 2 a.m. because I've just been doing too much work, I went to bed, recently, 10 o'clock. It's super weird. I don't like it. But I wake up,
ooh.
I wake up, I feel fantastic, and I'm really proactive
Mm,
the next day. So it's kind of that. But I think it's taking, for me, throughout the day, I do regular check-ins, regular body check-ins. what does my body feel like? Because so often we are not paying attention to that whatsoever. So, oh my God, I feel a little bit agitated, whatever. Okay, so I need to self-soothe, or maybe I might need a bit of distraction. It's okay to distract yourself every now and again with something. But for me, it's kind of, rather than having set exercises that I do, because I do struggle with formal meditation.
Yeah.
I don't like too much structure. I'm very creative. I'm very kind of woo like that. So rather than having set things like a gratitude practice or whatever it may be, I just have this real attention to always tap back into the present moment. So acknowledge my feelings and sensations, connect to my body. How does it feel? And engage in the space that I'm in, the room that I'm in, or where I am. Listen to the sounds of the trees or the wind, or notice chatter or whatever. Just keep checking back in with those 3 steps: acknowledge sensations, connect to the body, engage in the environment that you're in. So it's like a mindfulness practice. It's like I do that every single day, and it's really, really helped me in the last year. It's been transformational because you start to notice stuff a lot. Wow, I notice I always do this then. Boom, right, I can deal with that. So I hope that's useful. So rather than giving loads of exercises, that's what I do.
I love it. And because we can all, it's when we can even use those exercises like, oh God, I didn't do it again, and another thing to add to the list or to resist, or it can feel restricting. So if you're listening, and some people they're like, oh my God, I would love to have set tools each day and then very particular structure. My brain likes that. And then other people are like, F that. I don't want anything to do with structure. Let's be creative. I like, it's not always black and white. There's a great middle ground. So I just love that here's someone practicing wellness. His life is dedicated and committed to that and self-awareness, and that you're actually have some creativity and fun with it too. And I love that. I just actually sent out one of my favorite exercises in my newsletter this week, and it was the sturdy. I call it the Sac Exercise. I've got to come up with a better name, like something inspiring, but that's just what it's. The acronym is Security, Approval, Control, Celebrate, and it's literally a body check. And I really, it's like setting an alarm randomly throughout the day. It goes off, and you do that. It's a body scan, exactly like what you're saying. And I realized it was regulating a nervous system. And that was some of the best coaching I ever got from someone when I was going through a serious depression and quote unquote experiencing lots of anxiety. He's like, dude, you just need to go skip every day outside and giggle for 5 minutes a day. And if your neighbors see you, bonus points. And but by the end of the week, it was incredible how it really retrained my nervous system. And it reminds me too, Owen, of you said, his name was Preston Smiles, and shout out to him. He's going to be on here soon too. Owen, you were talking about how thoughts can be exercise or activities or something. And
behaviors. Our thinking, most of our thinking
behaviors. Yeah,
a lot of it's behavior based. Yeah.
And I like to use the metaphor of like a record of vinyl, and for those of us who still knows what that is, and you have, and it's like the track, it's been worn in, and the needle's been on the same track. So you're literally exercising that muscle, right? Of choosing that thought again. And that some of these activities, and even a body check-in, or just taking time to pause and think and ask those questions, can just help move the needle somewhere else. And so you're slowly practicing bringing that needle off that old track through to a new one, to a new space of awareness, and to, hey, maybe my nervous system, like, we can be okay. We can work with this. It doesn't have to be all at the effect of.
Yeah, it's kind of this sense of relearning and unlearning. So, we think about this journey of behavior and thought patterns and addictions, or whatever it may be, with the, neuroplasticity, how we can reshape our brain through neural pathways. It's not just about dealing with all of the issues and the suffering, the pain that you have and the struggles. It's also about starting to start new things that are aligned with your values. You can do both at the same time, pendulate back and forth. It's really, really important, because otherwise you get bogged down with dealing with all your stuff. But how about we engage with other stuff that you love? So that's all part of the self-awareness and compassion journey, is what can you do with that? And I think behaviors are really hard to change, especially if they're trauma related and they've kept you safe. It's all about safety. Your body wants you safe. The way you behave is kind of in the search for safety, really, even if it's not effective and it's actually making your life worse, it's in the aid of safety. So even though we might find safety weird, we're kind of doing it anyway by the way we're behaving. So we feel safer. We don't want to feel scared. That's just, I know people watch horror films in that moment, maybe they want to feel scared, but it's just remembering that is that when we get stuck and we just feel really overwhelmed by the way our life is or the way we're behaving, like, oh God, and self-judgment and all of that stuff, all we can really do is step back, become aware, meet it with compassion and go, what life do I want? What values do I want to live? And just start there. So when I'm coaching with people, we're just going to start there. Let's start building a future at the same time of dealing with your past, because it's really important to do both. That's just my message. I wanted to make sure that was there.
Thank you so much. It is heard loud and clear. And we really, I love this. I could listen to you talk all day. We're going to, I want to ask you some sort of closing questions here. And I just want to say I'm so grateful for your time and your message and who you are with the world. So thank you for showing up and sharing yourself so generously here today.
No problem. I could do this all day. I just want to thank you. I love talking to human beings. So I could just do this all day. So thank you so much for letting me be here.
Oh, thank you, Owen. And if you're just listening, you're here on the Dude You're Getting Well podcast. If you're watching live, this is going to be a podcast streaming very soon, coming to a theater near you. And this is Owen Morgan of the Awareness Space. So Owen, if people want to find out about you and get some more of your beautiful wisdom or work with you as a coach or ask you questions, what's the best place they can find you?
Best place is just theawareness-space.com. Nice and easy. And on there, you'll find everything, coaching stuff. I'm going to start groups as well, well-being groups, and there's loads of podcast stuff on there. I've got 2 podcasts now, so there's two different ways people can listen. So just go straight there. Everything you need is there.
Cool. I was just typing it in. I'm like, wow, yeah, there's 3 S's across when you're typing it. Got to be really careful.
Yeah, don't forget. Yeah, there's people say, have you spelled that wrong? No, it's definitely 3 S's.
No, it's brilliant. So we got that. That's awesome. And obviously here, and don't forget to subscribe as well if you're listening, and share this with someone who could use it, because the algorithms, they make so much more money from rage and engagement from that. So let's create some positive healing medicine out in the world, shall we? So if you're listening, we need your help, and you can do it just by sharing or tagging a friend. So thank you. And before we go, Owen, I have a few final questions. So if you had, what would you say is your superpower?
I don't like these questions anymore. My superpower, well, from what everybody's told me, so
you don't have to answer it.
No, for everything everybody's told me is I just seem to have this knack ever since I set up an anti-bullying club when I was a kid, after being horribly bullied for years, bringing all of the younger kids together to feel safe. It's bringing people together, really. I think that my superpower has been about engagement, making people feel good, bringing them together, and sitting back and watching that space unfold. I think that's probably it. It's space holding in a group dynamic, I guess, would be my power.
That's beautiful. And we actually didn't really get into it much with the bullying, but how, I assume most people here have either been a bully or been bullied or both. So which you were more, what was your experience when you were a kid? You were more bullied?
Yeah, it was weird because I was bullied by my own group of I thought they were my friends, obviously, but I just really wanted their approval because I was so lonely, and they just beat me up every day after school, and I go home with bruises, hiding it from my parents. So it was so lonely.
High
and that
school
was
too?
Yeah, so that was when I was 12, 13, 14. So it was a really rough period for that to happen. I did get out of that group in the end, but I had so much trauma from that. It was just horrendous. So, but I went into sixth form, which would be, I guess, college for you guys. Set up an anti-bullying club. So that was like my first ever project about helping and supporting other people. So I guess ever since I've been in that.
Yeah, and thank you for saying that. I mean, it's just, my dad taught me so much about bullying as a kid, and because he was badly bullied, and I realized that we just don't talk about that. And that was one of the first men who ever told me that bullies are people who are hurting a lot more than they are hurting you. And so how have you transformed your relationship to bullying?
It's like we talked about earlier. It's about trying to understand somehow, some way that they're dysregulated, they're in pain, they're going through stuff, or even with them, fitting in. You don't want to be the kid in a group that doesn't bully the other guy. You don't want to be the non-bully of the bullying tribe. So also you want to fit in as well. So
Mhm.
there's a bit of that, but it's just
You want to
it's
survive,
remember.
right?
Yeah, it's just acknowledging it wasn't okay. I go back and I spend time in a child and I'll hold his hand and tell him it's going to be okay. And I joke with him about how life unfolds and the cool stuff that I've done. Then I have a little cry when I do that. Keep going back, healing the inner child in that school field. Just keep going back, keep going back. And by doing that with that compassion, I can also take my inner child away from those bullies and say to those bullies, hope you guys are going to be okay, but we're going to go now. Kind of just healing what I could have done, I guess, was walk away and just do
Yeah.
it later.
Yeah, that's awesome. What a great tool now that you could practice doing. Because I've heard the brain can't really tell a difference between lies and the truth or whatever you tell it believes. So if you can, and I've heard this in after 9/11, and I had really severe post-traumatic stress, and I was studying uh, that disorder and how to heal it. And I met so many, and I was actually happening to play a lot of veterans with PTSD at the time on TV or movies. It was just like a thing I got really good at and I liked. And I guess I could relate to them. So I started talking to them and actually meeting veterans and asking them about it and some of the healing modalities. And one had said it was just a reframing. He would literally, go through some of the experiences, but then create a new association with it. Like, find a positive experience or comfort himself in that moment or pull himself out of it, like just like you said, that you can actually literally revisualize something different happening. And that neuroplasticity, which is so great we have, that we can actually create new pathways in the brain. And being with the space, like taking time to feel those feelings. I heard you say that, and like have a little cry. Like, what a beautiful thing to hear a man say, that I like hold on to my inner child, tell him it's going to be okay. We acknowledge the bullies, we walk into the safe space, I feel my feelings, and then I move on and I practice that again and again.
Yeah, because that's all the inner child needed. I needed someone to come along and say, "Hey, you cool? I'll walk home with you." And that's why when I set up the anti-bullying club, my number one mission was to, if there were kids walking home that I knew would be worried about that, because that was my story, I'd walk home with them. So as a sixth form, I was like 6'2", I got in shape, and so I just walk home with these beautiful, 11, 12-year-olds, and just walk home with them and chat with them about the things that they're into and just make sure they get home safe. And I hope that has some kind of impact now, all these years later for them as adults. They'll remember me, because you can really help people by just hanging out with them. People forget that. Just hang out with them, make them laugh, talk about good times. It's so powerful. It's so basic.
Yeah, yeah, it really is. I remember when I started 12-step work as well, someone said, you asking someone else how they're doing could be the greatest act of service ever. Or you calling someone else and asking them for help. Say I could use a friend, could be the greatest act of service ever, because then you allow someone else to be of service to you. You allow that space, and immediately a power greater than yourself. And so it's so beautiful. And we have like some really great tools from this today of what you can do for yourself and with other people. Um, so we've learned about your superpower as an adult. What would you say? So you have a child. What would you say if your kid was to describe your superpower? What would he say it is?
Right. Well, I'll just do what he says. He says, "I'm the best toy engineer he's ever seen." So
That's awesome.
whether that's building Lego or building dens, I'm very creative. So I build like the most amazing things for him, and it blows his mind. He feels like I'm like his child friend rather than an adult. And I'll take that every day, because if I can play like he can play, I think I'm doing the right thing as an adult, because I can actually not take life too seriously, and I owe him for that, because he's shown me that I can play. It's beautiful.
Yes. What another great gift too, that like grown men can play and have fun and be silly. And that
Yeah.
actually is probably a lot sexier than trying to be tough all the time. Um, if you, okay, this is, so now we're gonna get into like, they're a little bit more fun and random, but if your life were a Hollywood film, what do you think would be the title of it? What would you title it?
Using some of my own film metaphors against me. I like this.
Mm.
Oh God, my creative side is, I'm really going to have to think this through. I'm not going to say The Awareness Space, because that's too obvious. Title of my Hollywood film. Ben, you've got me. You've got me here. You've got me. You've got me. I don't know, to be honest. That's weird. Safe and Social. I call it Safe and Social. Does sound like the most exciting film in the world.
Yes, I love it. See, sometimes
sound like the
put me
most
on
exciting thing.
spot like this, you can't think too much. It just
So rather than
brilliance
Fast and Furious, it'll be Safe and Social.
Safe and Social.
There you go.
I love that. I'll invest in that. Let's talk about it. Is there a role for me in there somewhere?
Of course.
Okay, so who would you cast as your parents? If you could cast anyone from Hollywood, who would you cast as your parents in this film?
Whoa, what a weird question. I love that. Got to try and get some psychology on that. I love my psychology. What is that all about?
Like, I love the movie Running with Scissors. I love films about dysfunctional families. I don't know why, so I'm always interested in like the parent figures. And
So is this characters or actors you're talking about?
Actors. Yeah, what actors? I mean, actually, I've had people answer with characters before. It was used like cartoons was the best analogy they could use for their parents, but you can use whatever comes to mind.
Because I wish I could play more with my parents, it would be Helmsworth that plays Thor would be my dad, because he is
Nice.
he's very silly, so that'll be a good shout. And then woman wise, maybe just some of the lovely characters from kids films, like from Paw Patrol. What's her name? Sky. Yeah, just one of those cool, like really lovely girls from TV shows. What a nice weird combo that is.
I love it for Paw Patrol. That's great. I'm sure I'll know that very soon.
You will. You will.
Do you have any secret hidden talents or anything you don't normally talk about that you're actually really good at?
Oh God, I'm such an open book. I share it all. Hidden talents. To be honest, I'm so open. There's nothing I don't talk about. So there isn't any, because I just make sure that I always honor that. And I'm trying. All I'll say is, like, for anybody listening, just for open, if you have talents and stuff, is just own it. Just be proud of your talent and just own that stuff. I love podcast hosting, and I think I'm a really good host. I want to own that and love it and embrace myself and give myself a big hug and go, fair play. You love to present. You love big hug. I like to show up and present and be silly and hold a space and just own your talents. That's a really weird answer, but please, everybody, own it. Do it.
Fuck yeah. That's what comes out of this question. I'm going to ask it more. I love it. Okay, here's what we'll close with. You could give the world one gift right now, Owen. You could just, and the magic of Owen Morgan spreads across the universe. What gift would you give everyone?
Compassionate awareness. It's a no-brainer. Absolute no-brainer. If everybody can be compassionately aware of themselves, there just wouldn't be war. There wouldn't be pain and suffering and abuse. We would all care about ourselves and how we're experiencing life and care about others. Compassionate awareness would be the best superpower of all time for me.
Beautiful. And you kind of said it, but what would we all be doing if we all had compassionate awareness? What do you see us all doing?
We'd all be living our truth. We'd be aligned. We'd be living to our values, and we would just be really present. We'd be really present to everybody, not overwhelmed by anything. We're a tribe, we're a community. You know how tribes used to bring up kids? The community brought up children back then. There'd be like 10 caregivers. Now we're all insulated.
Yeah.
Don't talk to me. So I just think we'd be
I love that. Well, if you're listening, this is Owen Morgan from the Awareness Space here on Dude, You're Getting Well. Dudes, I really hope you take this and practice this. And, practice makes perfect, but we want to practice progress, not perfection. So any little step forward for yourself, for love. If you need permission, here it is today. You don't need permission. But let's make some more space for love in the world, especially if you're a guy listening. I hope this reaches all of you, and remember to share it with someone you love, and please subscribe and follow Owen, because he's really special. I think he is. Owen, I'm so grateful for you sharing your wife's nailing things in the corner. It's perfect. It's a perfect.
Perfect.
I want to thank you so much for sharing your time so generously with us. Please stay in touch, and could we do let's do a self hug together? Are you open to that?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, cool. So I would like to invite anyone listening to actually, Owen, could you lead a guided self hug for anyone listening?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure.
Okay, cool.
It doesn't have to be just, you want to just be able to connect. So you don't have to hug your whole body. You could just maybe put your hand on your heart, maybe one on your belly, just somewhere that's comfortable. You have to feel comfortable. Just touch it somewhere that feels comfortable to you. I'm going to go for the arms around. And the most important thing is just to notice the squeezing of that hand, notice the temperature, the sensations underneath your hand, and just feel into it. Imagine this was someone else giving you a hug, or maybe it's an animal or a dog, and just really connect to kind of whatever the hell love is. Who knows what love is? Different for everybody. But just really tap into the sensations of being held, because we all deserve to be held. And that's, I think, a birthright. And I just hope all of us will have the opportunity to be held like that. So just take that in. You're worthy of it. And yeah, reach out if you need anything.
That is so beautiful. Yes. I
Mhm.
love that. Well, thank you, Owen, and thank you everyone who's listening and a part of this. I hope you have a beautiful day. And Owen, please stay in touch.
Will do.
And dudes, last reminder, please share this with someone you love. That's the best gift you can give. And actually, I'm going to change that. The best you can give is to practice some of this with yourself and then share it with someone else. Right?
Definitely. Yeah. Thank you so much, Ben.
Have a